I'm really not that busy, so why do I feel like I have no time? Welcome back to another episode of Terrible 20s. I'm Michaela, you are on the channel of Learner of Love, and today we are going to be talking about time management and toxic productivity. I spend a lot of time on the internet, and as I was scrolling through my YouTube recommended, I came across a video of a woman who time tracked minute by minute 2 weeks of her life, and she took us on a breakdown through what she did during that time, how much of her time throughout the week was spent on her phone, spent working on YouTube projects, and took us through exactly what her life was like for those 2 weeks. I was intrigued by this idea because I know I have a lot of free time, but I also feel like I have no time to do the things that I want to do. So I wanted to see where exactly my free time was going and how to get it back. Before we get into what I did for my 2 weeks that I tracked, I want to talk a little bit about time management and toxic productivity. The goal of effective time management is to foster productivity and spend more time on things that matter to you. It seems simple enough, and in essence, it is. But for me, and I feel like a lot of other people, we try to manage our time so stringently and so strictly that it actually becomes toxic. That leads us into our next topic, toxic productivity. Now, I know toxic has become sort of a buzzword these days, used for anything that mildly inconveniences you or makes you feel even a little bit uncomfortable. But in this case, I think toxic really does apply to the concept of toxic productivity. So what is toxic productivity? Asana describes toxic productivity as a drive to be productive at all times, not just at work, but in all areas of life. It happens when you push yourself to unhealthy extremes in order to accomplish more, often at the expense of your physical and mental health. You might feel like you can't do something just for the sake of doing it, like going for a walk with your friends or chatting with your coworkers over coffee. Instead, all of your actions have to be stepping stones towards a larger goal or achievement. Toxic productivity takes the joy out of everyday activities and causes you to push yourself too hard for too long. In the long run, this can lead to burnout, depression, and other physical and mental health consequences. Raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by toxic productivity. I mentioned in my last video that I actually have to schedule in fun time in order for me to do things that I actually enjoy doing, like painting, studying my languages, or playing video games. I also mentioned in my last video that I feel like I lost my grit. One might say I could be suffering from burnout. The habit of toxic productivity runs very deep within me, and I think it probably runs pretty deep with a lot of working class families. Anyways, I bring all of this up because I am starting to think that my loss of grit and my inability to effectively manage my time has come not from my laziness, but from toxic productivity in general. You guys might have heard this phrase pop up on your social media regarding procrastination and sleeping. I believe it originated in China, and the term directly translates to revenge bedtime procrastination. So essentially, people have come up with this term because instead of going to sleep at a reasonable time and getting a reasonable amount of rest so they can have a good day the next day, they stay up really, really late doing things that they enjoy because they didn't have enough time to do it during the day. And I think this is another form of rebellion against toxic productivity. So forcing time into your schedule at times when you're allowed to be doing fun things, which is when you're not at work, is a way to combat the feeling of having to be productive all the time. So for them, it is directly before bed, but for me, it is during any time that I can spare. And I will spend it binge watching Netflix, scrolling through Instagram, watching completely random YouTube videos that I never would have clicked on otherwise. And instead of getting joy out of doing those things that I like doing, I just feel a never-ending sense of dread and doom because I feel like I should be doing something productive with that time, even when I don't necessarily need to be productive all the time. Nobody needs to be productive 100% of the time. Oftentimes, what will happen while I am doing those things is I will have negative self-talk. You shouldn't be doing this right now. This is why nobody believes you when you say you're gonna do something, or you're wasting your time, you're not gonna get anywhere, you're gonna be poor, you're gonna be homeless. All these terrible things, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to live like that. So, now that we've talked about toxic productivity and how it affects our time management skills, let's take a deep dive into 2 weeks that I spent tracking my time.
Hello from voiceover Michaela. So here's an overview of week 1, very colorful. Generally I had green as my reading and schoolwork, red as my time on my phone, purple spending time with people, and orange as chores, and yellow as work. So if we take a look, there's a good amount of color on here, and there are definitely large chunks of red, but mostly we're seeing purple, yellow, and green. There's a lot of green this week, which I was really proud of, but I can also attribute to that being the fact that it was the last week of school and I had just got a new book. So that's why there's a lot more green this week than next week. So up at the top, I tried to keep things as organized as possible by assigning different colors to things. Like gray is my time in bed after my alarm wakes up, yellow is my breakfast, and the like bluey color is like my morning routine. The difference between like breakfast and morning routine is breakfast is me actually physically cooking, and morning routine is like brushing my teeth, washing my face, and all that. Purple again is spending time with other people. So this Saturday I was with my boyfriend. This Sunday I was with my boyfriend, my brother, and his wife, my sister-in-law. And yeah, that's kind of how this week is looking. You can also tell that I worked 4 days this week, and my working situation is very strange. It's actually even more different now than it was back then. Jumping into next week, we can see it looks very different. There is a lot more red and tracking all the way up into 12 a.m. Yes. So I spent a lot more time on my phone these days. I also spent a good chunk of time doing something I enjoy, which is making my Halloween costume. And I spent a lot of time with other people, right? So from 6 p.m. to one night all the way to 3 a.m. the next night, I was hanging out with my friends. That is the most I had seen them for a while, but that's normally how our hangouts go. And so because I was up so late, I ended up sleeping really, really, really late. And as you can see, immediately after waking up, I was on my phone for like 2 hours. That's pretty common for me when I have like a bad night. I normally wake up and immediately jump on my phone. But the thing is, that same day, I was spending time with my boyfriend. Again, I was probably on my phone those days. I mean, I'm not like exclusively looking at him, but it's different when you're with somebody, now I'm saying. I also threw in some reading time when I was with him as well. The bedtime routine, pretty similar. Took him to the gym and to the doctor, and then I was on my phone for a really long time, pretty much the whole day. Generally speaking, when I'm tired or I haven't had a good day or whatever, I just spend a lot of time on my phone, and I think that's a pretty common sentiment. I was on my phone pretty much all day on Monday, and guess how I felt at the end of that day? Unwell, not good. I think we all understand that being on your phone for an extended period of time isn't the best mentally, which internally makes it not the best physically. So that's pretty common, I would say. About like either once every few weeks or once a week, I do spend like an obscene amount of time on my phone. And looking at the other days, it's a pretty good mix. As you can see, there are quite a few gaps in my time tracking, and that's just because I probably was telling myself, I'll remember to track my time, I'll put it in later, and then I just never did. So I mean, it's not the most accurate, but I think it still gives a pretty good understanding of how I spent my time.
So what exactly was the point of doing this, you might ask? In all honesty, I just wanted to see generally where my time was going. I had a pretty good idea that I was spending a lot of time on my phone, and when I give you the breakdown, I personally don't think that's a lot, but maybe it is. Let me know in the comments. And I also wanted to know if there was any way for me to carve out more time to do things that I care about or that I think would be productive, and there definitely are, and I knew that from the beginning. So the first stat I want to talk about is the amount of time I spent on my phone. Give or take, I want to say 2 hours. Considering those last 3 days, I didn't really track as stringently as I would like to. So in total, in those 2 weeks, I spent 2,180 minutes on my phone. That comes out to approximately 36.3 hours, or 18 hours per week, or 2.5 hours a day. 2.5 hours a day is a lot, but also not a lot. Like if I were to come home after 9 to 5, I'd probably spend about 2 hours, 2.5 hours watching TV or something. And since I don't really watch TV, I mostly spend time on my phone. I feel like it's not that bad. What's bad is where and how I'm spending that time on my phone. I don't really think the issue is the amount of time I'm spending, but rather when and how I'm spending that time. When I'm spending, 12 hours on my phone, not the best. But when I'm spending 1 hour, 2.5 hours a day on my phone, and it's at the end of the day or during my lunch or something like that, I feel like I will feel less stressed out about being on my phone or spending time on my phone. That's also another reason why I don't really pay attention to the screen time, because I do keep apps for my textbooks on my phone. I have books that I like to read on my phone, and screen time, you can't really filter out what to include in your screen time. So sometimes it'll say I spent, 12 hours on my phone when 6 of those hours were spent reading my personal Kindle books, and then 2 hours was spent reading my textbook and stuff like that. So that's why another reason why I wanted to actually time track and not necessarily go based on screen time. The next stat that I don't know why, but I was worried about, or concerned with, was the amount of time I spent in bed before actually getting out of bed and getting ready for the day. So over those 2 weeks, the amount of time I spent in bed was 735 minutes, or 12 hours. Over the 2 weeks, only 12 hours. That's half a day. So I don't feel that bad for staying in bed for an hour. I think what bothers me most is the time that I wake up versus the time that I get out of bed. I think if I were to wake up at 5:30, 6 a.m. and I would stay in bed for an hour and I would actually get out of bed around 7:30, I think I would feel a little bit better, because there are so many more morning hours left in the day for me to use. And for me personally, I like getting things done in the morning. It makes me feel more productive. I have more energy in the morning. Once it hits 2 o'clock, I'm checked out. So yeah, I think this was really interesting. I think I would probably do this again on a different tracking app, not necessarily Google Calendar, because it only goes in increments of 5s. So there were a lot of times where I started something at 7:47 and then I ended something at 8:06, and you can't really track that. But I would be interested in tracking down to the minute, you know what I mean? I think that'd be fun. But out of this, I realized that I need to be less hard on myself, because I'm actually not as bad as I think I am, and everybody has bad days, just like I do with that 12-hour day on my phone. But it's okay. You're doing all right. You're not actually wasting your life on your phone the way that you think you are. While there are some things that you could be doing better, yeah, maybe don't immediately get on Instagram when you wake up. Maybe put on Do Not Disturb, or some, app limits when you want to be productive and stuff like that. But overall, you're doing okay. You're doing okay. So with that, I will say goodbye. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think about revenge bedtime procrastination. Have you ever done that? Would you consider time tracking? And let me know if there's anything else you want to see me talk about. Bye!